Hello and welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Grateful Redhead podcast. I'm Angie, your Grateful Dead loving host, and I'm so excited about my guest today. I've got Bernie Moro from the Our Vital Earth Worm Farm, and I know that might sound weird. Yes, she's a worm farmer, and that's how I initially met her. Gosh, Bernie, I think it's been well over 10 years already since we first met.
Yes,
so I want to welcome you to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be joining with you. Yes, and it has been over 10 years.
I know. It's amazing. Time flies so fast. And, you know, when I first met you, you were that spunky lady in the cool hat, always tipped up on the side, spreading the good news about worm farming and how important composting was. And that's why I really connected with, you know, how connected to the earth that you were and how important you knew that making those changes were important. You know, I think one time you told me you spent the early part or most of the 70s poisoning the earth, and you thought going to composting was a way that you and Carl would be able to give back to the earth. Is that
Yes.
true? Do I remember that properly?
Yes, but it started way before the 70s. Because actually in the 50s is whenever all of the plastics and so on were coming out. And yes, we were part of all of that. And we did not think about it having the repercussions that it has. And so that is why we felt like we needed to do our part to clean up the mess that we helped to make. Yeah. Yes.
And you guys thought composting would be a great way to do that. So tell us a little bit about how you got into composting and where you went to learn about it.
Well, we have found out that Australia was able to reduce down the amount of organic waste going to their landfills by 65% in just 4 years, from 1996 to the year 2000. And we thought, why can't we do that here in the United States? And so that is why we went over to Australia back in 2002, and we were tutored by doctors of microbiology and a 25-year vermicultures advocate. And that is how we really got started and really got excited about what we were doing.
That is awesome. So I'm assuming you guys came home and you decided you were going to start a worm farm?
Well, we had decided to have the worm farm before we went over to Australia. And we were looking at our internet, and we would be seeing how to do this and how to do that. And so we would follow those instructions. And when we thought we really had it down pat, and then we went to Australia, we had to start all over again because their concept was entirely different than what the concepts were that we had seen on the YouTubes and so on the internet. So we came back and we were following their instructions as to how to. And their instructions are so different. And in fact, before we even went over there to be tutored, we were told to read 3 books so that we would be on the same page as they were over there, or we would not even be able to grab hold of what they were going to be teaching us. And those 3 books were The Secrets of the Soil. And
do you recall the titles?
One was The Secrets of the Soil. The other was Rock Dust Patterns. And the other one was, let me see, Secrets of Soil, Rock Dust Patterns. The other one escapes me right now, but they were all very in-depth in how many years ago our forefathers would do the things that they would do in order to be able to make their soil fertile, and that they would be getting good energy and so on from the soil. And it was so different than anything that we had seen or heard, other than, you know, if you go back, way back to our ancestors and read their books. So, you know, all
It's
of
so
this
interesting. I love how they made you like prepare for your visit.
Excuse me?
And how long did you spend over there learning from them in Australia?
Well, actually, we went over there and we were tutored for 3 weeks, and we were with them 24/7. We had 3 different doctors of microbiology that worked with us, and along with the several of the different worm growers over there. But the one that especially was very, very instructive to us was a gentleman who was a 25-year vermiculturist, and his wife happened to be a doctor of microbiology out of Indonesia. It was awesome. They took us on a 3,000-mile journey over there. And while we were there, it was so awesome because, first of all, they taught us like we were a big class. We first of all had gotten our initial instructions in a hotel instructing room, a regular room that they would have for a seminar. And then from there, they took us to peanut plantations. They took us to sweet potato plantations. They took us to wineries. And of course, the wineries were awesome, and we always got to taste the wine. But the thing that was so exciting to us is that at these wineries, they were able to take their squeezings, and they were able to take all of their cuttings and feed them to the worms. And then they would use what the worms would produce and give it back to their plants. And the like back to like increased the sugar content in their wine and into their grapes and so on, that it was just awesome. Remember, that was back in 2002. We did not have that much Australian wine in our country in 2002. Now we have a lot of Australian wine in our country, and it is processed in such a way that it is just also natural. And anyway, also what we did there is we even went to an island that was an island that was strictly for holidays and so on, but it was completely self-sustaining. They had their own, they had their own composting area there where they took all of the foods from the dining area. They took all of the cuttings from the island there, and they would put them into this one area. The foods they would put into the freezer. They would grind up these foods and so on and feed them to the worms. And then everything that the worm produced, they put right back into the soil again. It was a constant rollover. Then they took us to rose gardens. They took us to bowling greens. Bowling greens over there is their answer to our golfing over here. And everything was just so pristine and clean over there. It was just, it was an awesome experience.
Especially when we think about all the food scraps that go to waste here. Our society pretty much just dumps everything in the trash. We don't even think twice about kind of that circular, life of putting it back into the soil and regenerating those nutrients. So when you came back to the United States, what was like the kind of the big thing that you had to change, or the realization that you had learned over there that was different than you expected before you went?
Well, one of the things that we had found whenever we were over in Australia is how clean the country was, how very, very clean it was. There was not a gum wrapper. There was not a cigarette butt. There was nothing like that you found on the ground. And in fact, when Carl and I first flew in there, we flew in early in the morning, and we could see the sun rising while we were in the plane, and that was an awesome experience. But then we came down into a little coffee shop, and we sat on the outside of the coffee shop, and we watched the people coming in to the area with their briefcases and so on. They were going to work. They were getting off of the boat, and they would take even the gum wrapper that they may have had or the cigarette butt, and they walked directly to a garbage disposal, a garbage can, or a place where they could put out their cigarette butt. We have none of that here in the United States. And we asked them, how did you ever get the people to do this? And they said they put teeth in their laws. If they had littering laws just like we do here in the United States, but we do not follow them here. But over there, they put teeth in them and they put fines to it. So then whenever we came back here to the States, we had thought, oh gosh, how awesome it would be if we could make that kind of a difference over here. One of the things that we did whenever we came over here, we set up, because you had to let people know that you were in business and this is what you were doing. And so we went to Render's Market. and we had a booth up at Renninger's Market. And Carl said, make sure, honey, that we put all kinds of signs around, because people love to read, because they don't want you to ask them any questions, because if you ask them any questions, they feel like you're putting your hand in their pocket and they're going to have to take money out. And so he says, first of all, put lots of signs up for them to read. But as it would be going by, I would say, let me show you how you can take care of your yard, your garden, and all of your vegetable gardens and everything, and do everything with the byproduct of the worm, and everything would be natural. And some people would say, oh, I like my chemicals. And my heart would just sink, and I would think, I'll pray for you, because you know that is not the answer. You know that was not going to give them good health. And so those were some of those steps that we had taken. And then we wanted to get to the children. It's so important to get to the children. And so we went into the schools and we set up programs and so on, so that we would be able to either teach the children in the school, or we would have them to come out to the farm, and we would have classes out at the farm, and they would learn to make many worm farms. And you see, whenever they would come out, most of the time, parents would come along with them, either as chaperones, or they would come as homeschool groups. And this way, we were able to teach the children, and the parents were learning through the eyes of their children. And we wanted this because now the children, whenever they went home, were able to talk with their parents, and their parents knew what they were talking about. And it was so neat to let them know, here is a new
That's so
name.
cool, because yeah, they're both learning together. Yeah, and they can engage in these conversations that they would have never have had had they not come out to the worm farm and experienced that class. I always tell people that the worm farm for me is the best trip to take. Like, it is so much fun to go out there, see what you guys have done, to grow the worms, and when the kids get to make those little mini worm farms that you talked about. And it's just such an interesting experience. And I know when I came out to the farm, I was inspired to start worm composting. And some people ask me, is it easy? Does it stink? What about all the worm poop? And do worms really pee? Like, we get the weirdest questions, right? I love it that they engage in the questions, but the questions are pretty weird when it comes to worm pooping and peeing and stuff like that. So, I'm sure you have your own answers. And why don't you share what you say when people ask you, what about the worm poop and pee?
Well, I let them know that the worms function just like we do. They poop and they urinate just like we do. And their poop they can wiggle away from. But their urine is attached to their skin like our perspiration is. And so what do we do when we perspire? We jump into the shower and we get a shower. And so this is how we get the urine off of the worms. And it's really called a vermi liquid. And by the way, telling the kids vermi composting and vermiculture and all of that is the study of the worms, because vermi is the Latin for the worm. But the thing of it is, I let them know that because of the way that we feed them, the way that we were taught in Australia, the worms have a gizzard like a chicken or a bird. And I never knew that until after I was over there. They have this gizzard, and then we explained to the children what a gizzard is. And it is a pouch that has gravel in it. And because the worm has no teeth and they're not going to be bitten whenever they pick up the worm to put into their mini worm farm, they have no teeth. They have to be able to grind it up in some way. And then I show them with rocks how to do that, how that is actually working on the inside of the gizzard. And then we pass around the little grit that we give to them. And you see, the grit comes from 7 different locations, volcanic locations. And the reason for the 7 different volcanic locations is so that we can have 77 to 94 trace elements and minerals that is on the inside of the manufacturing portion of the worm, inside of that gizzard, so that all the food that goes through there and all of the poop that goes through there, which is called worm castings, and all the liquid, the urine that we're calling worm tea, has the 77 to 94 trace elements and minerals in it. So now whenever you're putting any of that into the soil, you can actually see the little white specks. You know that you're putting the nutrition in the soil. And the other thing of it is a balance in the soil that is allowing your plant to take what it needs. Because whenever it takes what it needs, it's like being at a big, beautiful buffet that you go into, and you don't eat everything that's there, but you take what you need, what your body is telling you to take. And so whenever your plant needs iodine, it can take it because it's a balance. Whenever it needs anything else like iron or any of the magnesium, any of the nutrients, it can take it, all of the elements. And so that way, whenever you have it in the soil, it will be in your plant. Whenever it is in the plant, it will be in the food that the plant is giving to you, the fruits and vegetables. And then it will come into your own system, and you're getting that. And, you know, your normal is 666, and your nitrogen, potassium, and phosphate, your bodies need far more than that. We need all the good stuff. And this way.
So that's what I always loved about the grit, was I knew I was getting more nutrients into my system because it was putting it into the plants. Now, for those that are listening and wondering, how do we get that nutrients right from the worm to the plant? It's because we're taking that worm casting or the worm poop, right? And we're taking it out of the worm composter and taking those castings and putting them into the soil in order to amend the soil and to grow the plants from. And therefore the plants are able to take all the nutrients, like Bernie was talking about, into the plant, which we get the benefit from at the end result when it ends up on our plate. So, I think that not only is composting so important for that nutrient balance, but think of all the waste that we scrape just from preparing food at the end of our meal, that we just scrape right into the trash that could be utilized for all of that good to put back in the soil. So, can you tell me a little bit about the Worm Cafe?
Yes, I can. But one of the things I did want to let you know too, as far as we say composting. Composting is a process of heating up to break down. We're using compostable materials that we feed to the worms, but the worm castings is a cold process, where your composting is a hot process. And we need the compost to help to remediate our soil. But the worm castings is giving the oomph that it really needs then with the nutrition, because it did not heat up to break down. And the other thing, the grit that I want to share with you before we talk about the cafe, the grit, if you would just take this grit and sprinkle it along your plants, it would not do the job that it does whenever it has gone through the gut of the worm. It is almost like you saying, I need iron, and you are given a plate of nails. You cannot convert those nails for iron for your body. So the same thing with the plant. When it comes through the gut of the worm, it is readily available to the plant, and the plant can intake it. I just wanted to make that as a
great point, Bernie.
I think that is an awesome
for clarifying that.
Because people like to take and just sprinkle the things on their garden, and that is good. It is good, but it is not as available to the plant as whenever it has come through the gut of the worm. Okay. All right. Now, the Worm Cafe. Oh, I love the Worm Cafe. And, it first of all was a can of worms. You remember whenever you came to to our farm and you bought some can of worms, okay? They were the round things.
I still have a can of worm here in my yard.
Listen, I have it too, because I've had it since 2002. And these units are made out of old car battery cases. And, they are so durable and they are so good. I have my original faucet on it. I have everything, and it's still working fine. And it's almost 20 years. Yep. I mean, in this day and age, when you get
don't
something,
fix it if it ain't broke, right? So I
yeah,
still use
that's
it.
right, that's right. But they changed the design because women had said they would like to have something that was had corners to it rather than round. It was easier to put into a corner or whatever. And we have people that put their worm cafes into dining rooms. Into their kitchens, behind the couch in their living room, next to the refrigerator in their kitchen. I have a nurse that has it in her dining room, and she says whenever she has a guest over, and they'll say, "Oh, what is that over there?" She says, "Oh, that's my worm cafe," and she says, "Oh, yeah," and she says, "No, I'll show it to you after we're finished eating," and then that is where they go to put their scraps from their plate that they have left over. And the people are amazed because there was no odor.
Wow.
There is
What
no
a great
odor whenever you
opportunity
have
for
the lid
conversation.
down. There is no odor whenever you have the lid down. Whenever you put the lid up and you start stirring around in it, now you are disturbing it. And what's happening is that any of the bad pathogens that cause the odor, the worms within a 5-minute period will have it all taken care of, and there's no odor again. So anyhow, and always with the
It's amazing the job that those worms do in there.
Yeah. And whenever I first started working with the worms, I wore rubber gloves. I couldn't stand touching the worm. I could not stand putting a worm on a hook. I still can't put a worm on a hook. But I certainly took those gloves off because I felt like I needed to feel my babies. I needed to feel their warmth. I needed to see whether or not everything is okay with them. And you can feel it through your fingers that, hey, mama, this is good.
Yeah. It's like good earth on your hands.
Yes. And, the Worm Cafe, what I like about it is whenever you start out with just 5 pounds, 1 pound of worms, that worm bin will take care of 5 to 7 pounds of garbage per week. And as you are increasing and multiplying, the worms are increasing and multiplying, you need to increase the amount of food that you're putting in. The idea is that every time that you put food into the worm bin, you make sure that there's at least 25% of food that has not been eaten yet. Because you see, the worms are smarter than humans. They see that there's not a lot of food there. They think, uh-oh, a famine's coming. Gotta not reproduce. And that's what they do. They cease to reproduce. And we don't even have that in our humanity.
Right. They do an amazing job at eating. And I think that what I always liked about it was, that it separated, it would naturally separate, the cafe would naturally separate from the castings and the tea and allow, you to utilize the nutrients and the goodness that was coming out, and the worms could keep working on the top and eating away all the scraps.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about the scraps, we're talking about anything that once grew from the soil. They will eat anything that once grew from the soil. Whenever I have a class there, I will say, do they eat paper? I will get yes, no. Well, paper comes from a tree. So yes, they eat the paper. Will they eat apples and potatoes and lettuce? And of course, yes, they'll eat all of that. But then I will also ask them, will they eat the lint from the dryer? And yes, they'll eat the lint from the dryer because that was once cotton. And cotton grows from the soil. So anything that grows from the soil, they can have. The only thing that they don't eat is meat, bones, and dairy products.
Yeah, I used to put my nail clippings and, the hair from my hairbrush and stuff. Like, it's amazing when you start to think of all the things that we think of beyond food scraps that can go in there. So I think that if anybody's interested in vermicomposting or, learning different ways to reduce any of the scraps that they have in their kitchen or in their household, it's really an interesting concept to look at. And I would hope that everybody listening would reach out to Our Vital Earth and give them a call and see all that you guys have available over there. Because you're offering everything, not just here, let me sell you a worm cafe. You're providing the education and the nutrients and the grit and all of those things that come with having a successful time with getting those little worms to work for us. So I really appreciate what you've done over there. And I hope that anybody in our general area that can drive to you, make that trip to the farm, because it is so worth it. By the way, I saw you're having a kids class this weekend on Saturday.
Yes, we are.
You're still doing the having the kids and doing the mini farms with them?
Oh yes, very definitely.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Oh yes, and we always say a minimum of
something else I Go ahead, Bernie. I think I cut you off.
Okay. We always say that we'd like to have a class of a minimum of 15 and a maximum of 25. And we did not get an answer back from a Kissimmee group. And whenever they were on their way, they said, "Oh, we forgot to tell you we have 30 students that will be participating." And I had all the adults that came along with it. I'm telling you, my classroom, we had adults that were out the door. We just kept the classroom door open, but it was just awesome. And what I like so much is I had a woman that came there and she says, "This is my 4th time coming here. I have 5 children." And she said, whenever I said that we were going to the worm farm, my 19-year-old, who was 3 whenever I first brought him there, he says, "Oh, I wish I could take off work. I would like to go again." And that just pleases me no end.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And I always like to do everything with humor. I like to do everything with humor because they learn and retain whenever you teach with humor. And this is so fun for me.
Yeah,
I just love it.
Humor and song, I think, is the best way to learn. Anything with a tune or with humor, I think we tend to hold better in our brain for sure.
Okay, Grandma Bernie has a farm.
Not only today did I want to. You're so good, girl. And that's part of why I also want to have you on my show, is because you are, to me, so your vitality is just off the hook. I mean, you do so much. You send me some pictures recently. I saw you parasailing. Were you in Guatemala parasailing?
Yes,
Where
I was.
Where were you?
Mm-hmm. I was out. On Ottawa, and this is. This was a resort that was outside and let me see, I don't even know what the name of the main, the names are so crazy down there anyway, but we were there and there were 3 volcanoes right across the lake from us. And whenever we went off the cliff and so on, we were able to fly over the volcanoes. And I was so pleased because the pilot also let me handle the sails for a while. So it was just awesome. It was something that was on my bucket list, and I was able to do that, and I was so excited.
Well, and I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure you did this in your 90th year birthday. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I'll be 90. I'm in my 90th year, and I'll graduate on the 15th of July. The 15th of July, I will be officially completed 90 years. Okay. And I
my gosh. And
I enjoy life.
It really does amaze me, all the things you do. Yes, you do. You enjoy it to the fullest. And that's something I want you to share with me and to, people who are listening or that have the advantage of listening to the show with you on it. And to give an idea of, what does that look like? You travel a lot, obviously you're taking good care of yourself and your health along the way. And, what advice do you have for those generations that are coming up, to what are some good habits that they could start doing now while they're young to, I know a lot of it has to do with genetics, that, it's kind of what we are brought into this world with, but not all of it. And I'd like to hear what you have to say as far as what you might say your vitality and, what you've done that you feel has brought you to your 89 3/4 years.
Oh, no, it's more than 3/4 because I'm only about 2 months away. I'm older than what you're letting me be. And I want to be older than what you're letting me be. An accomplishment. Okay, the thing of it is, everything in moderation. My mom used to say, everything in moderation. I love to eat well. My base was in Missouri. My mom and dad had a farm. We had our own milk. We had our own beef. We had our own pork. We had our own chickens. We had our own fruit that dad had an orchard on the hillside. I felt so pampered, and I didn't realize how pampered I was until I moved down to Florida in 1960 and realized that the food tasted different down here than what it did up home where we were growing it all. And I just never, that was never a realization for me until then. And I try to eat as much naturally as I possibly can, but I do not go overboard as far as no meats or anything like this. I just do everything in moderation. If you do too many desserts, you're not going to feel so pretty good. If you eat too much meat, you don't feel so pretty good. Okay, so everything in moderation. And the other thing of it is you really have to know your own body. And I was born anemic. I've been anemic all my life, but I have learned to live with it, and I know what I need through the help of a doctor back in 1959 who found this while I was pregnant with my 7th child, and he gave me iron shot. And from that point on, whenever I had my 9th child in Florida, the doctor asked me, well, you tell me what I should do for you. And I appreciated that because I felt like he wasn't trying to do the way he normally does things. He felt like I had a route that he could follow. And so I told him the things that I needed. And he responded and he said, well, you no longer have to get a shot for that particular iron. You can now get it as a prescription. And then it went on through that I didn't need a prescription. I can get it over the counter. And the thing that really I feel keeps me really moving is ferrous sequels. That is one thing that is elemental iron. And because I'm anemic, I need to have the iron. And that's something else. Whenever you grow your vegetables in organics rather than the conventional, you get so much more iron in your system than what you do whenever it's grown conventionally. In fact, the iron is 1,938 milliequivalents of iron to 1 if it's growing conventionally. So those things are all that can be seen on our website too, because we have a lot of information on our website. But your diet is very important, and your rest and your exercise. And I just don't mean to go out and go to the gym to exercise. Do gardening, do walking, do things that are in the out of doors where you are enjoying. Hey, you want to get as much D3 as you can. And we're in a good area here in Florida where we have a good climate and that we can be out in the sun and not just laying out in the sun. We can be gardening. We can be doing things. And it's certainly not a boring life.
No, you live a very exciting life. I mean, I think you even went on a mission trip last year. I feel like you're always going somewhere. I can barely keep up with your travel schedule. And I think that's what keeps you young. Honestly, like if I had to pick something, I'd be like, it's because she just keeps trying new stuff and she just keeps putting herself out there. I think you're such an inspiration, Bernie. And I just hope you keep on doing what you're doing and keep sharing it with the world, because we need to know these things. We need to be reminded that there are better ways of doing things. And you're a perfect example to be sharing that.
Well, my daughter and my son right now are in Honduras and Nicaragua, and they are going up to the mesquite villages, and I just wish that I could be with them. They have been sending me daily, things that they have been doing so that I can be seeing, and I feel like I am a little fly on their shoulder. I hope it's a butterfly, but a little fly on their shoulder that I can enjoy feeling the things that I know that they are feeling as they are visiting with the natives up there. And it's exciting, and I wish I could be part of it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Bernie, for taking time and, talking with me today. It means so much to me that you share your time with me, and I always enjoy our conversations. So before we sign off, is there anything else that you might want to share with our listeners today, or where they can find more information about you?
Well, if they go on to www.ourvitalearth.com, we have a lot of information there, and I am happy to visit with anyone. I love visiting with people of all ages. They are such an inspiration to me, because that is where I get my inspiration, is from other people. And I just would love it if you even just give me a call. Call me at the office, 407-814-9218. If I'm not there, I'll call you back.
Say that one more time.
407-814.
Say that number one more time.
Okay, 407-814-9218. And if I'm not there, just leave a message or let Bonnie know that you would like to have a call back, and I'll call you right back. Okay? Because I love people.
Yeah, Bonnie does a great job. Shout out to Bonnie.
Yes, shout out for Bonnie.
Yes.
Right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Angie.
Oh, thank you so much, Bernie. And remember, this is why I do this podcast, just to get a chance to talk to cool and interesting people like Bernie. So if you know somebody that should be on our show, please reach out to me. I would love to get a chance to talk with them as well. So if you like what you heard today, please plug in on all the places that you listen to a podcast at the Grateful Redhead Podcast. And I look forward to our next episode. So until we meet again, please love each other and take care of each other. Peace out. So before you go today, I want to thank you for listening to this episode. I've built a business on formulating natural household cleaning and body products without plastic bottles or plastic packaging. So if you'd like to give them a try, head on over to wastefreeproducts.com and use promo code GratefulRedhead for 10% off your entire order. Thanks for listening.